Ball. It's just a bit good, that driver. It's just a bit good. Today we are looking at the Titleist GT drivers. Now we're here at the Fairmont St Andrews. As you can see, this is a fantastic place to be testing out these drivers. I'm going to be hitting some shots out on the course and talking you guys through all the stats. Now there are 3 different drivers in this range. I got fitted for the GT3. I'm going to be talking you through the difference between the GT2, 3 and 4, and also going into detail as to why I was fitted for the 3, but why you might be better off fitted for one of the other models. We're here at the Fairmont St Andrews. I'm going to pick a few different holes to test these drivers out on. Some of the holes that I really like and some of the holes that I do not. This is a very challenging golf course. You've got to be very accurate off the tee, so we'll see if the GT drivers can help me do that. It's just a bit good, that driver. It's just a bit good. Currently, there are 3 models in the GT range. You've got the 2, the 3 and the 4, and I was fitted for the GT3. So in the GT3, we've got this adjustability track. This is unique to this driver in the range. So what we're seeing here is this driver is ideal for the golfer who wants a little bit of everything. They're going to get distance, forgiveness, but they're going to be able to optimize it and adjust it for exactly what they're looking for. Now, of the 3 drivers in the range, the GT3 and 2 look the most similar initially. The difference is with the GT2, we've got a slightly different head shape. It's a little bit longer and more drawn out, although they are both the same volume at 460cc. Now, where we saw that adjustable track in the GT3, we don't have that in the GT2. Instead, the weight is at the very back of the club. So what that is doing is pulling the center of gravity out so that you get a higher MOI, making the GT2 very forgiving overall. So with the GT3, this is more for the golfer who can say, I know that I always strike this either in the toe, the heel, or in the center, and then they can use that adjustable track to make that the most forgiving point in the driver. For example, I have that weighting in the toe setting here because I know I consistently always strike it there. Whereas the GT2 is more forgiving overall from all points on the face for the golfer who doesn't know exactly where they're going to strike it all the time and really needs that forgiveness at every point on the face. And then the GT4, now this one is quite different in terms of the size. In terms of the design, it actually looks relatively similar to the GT2, but the head shape is very different. It's much smaller at 430cc. This one is the low spin driver. So this is for anybody who has very high spins and just wants to be able to control that a little bit more, or if you've got a faster swing speed, you might benefit from putting this one in the bag. And it's also just generally for any golfer who wants to see that slightly smaller club head when they stand at address with their driver. I think it's time for a bit of a challenge now, and let me tell you, this hole is certainly the right place for a challenge. We've got a potentially drivable par 4 here, but I have never driven this hole despite playing it many, many times. The reason for this is it's so tight up there. It's about 250 yards to the pin, but most people just take an iron and lay up. I'm gonna hit 5 shots and we're gonna see how many I can get on that green. Go ball. Be a little bit short. It was a good effort. It was a good effort. So we have challenge very successful. We've got 2 balls on the green, which, like I said, I've never driven this green before, so I'm very, very happy with that. The other 3 just came up on this left-hand side, which, to be fair, with the way that the hole is designed and the water on this hand side, I'm not too worried about that at all. I'd say this is a great show at how forgiving this driver is because I was really trying to hit those pretty hard. That distance is just on the upper end of what I can do. So we were really going for it and they've all ended up pretty well. I'd take any of these drives, but obviously I'm most happy with those 2 very close to the flag there. Coming on to some of the technology now within the GT drivers. Now there's one thing that there's been a lot of hype about, and that is the new material used in these drivers. So what we've got is a new lightweight seamless thermoform crown made from a matrix polymer. Now, what on earth does that mean? Basically, Titleist are using a brand new material that they've developed. It's not been used in a golf club yet until we've seen the GTs. And that material is 1/3 the weight of titanium. So what that means is that Titleist were then able to take the weight that they've saved from using that material and put it redistributed into the rest of the head to increase MOI and make this driver really forgiving. And that thing about it being seamless is the reason that you don't really notice the difference between a GT and a TSR when it's sat at the ground, because although there's a bunch of new technology packed into the crown of the driver, they've designed it in a way that you just don't really see that when you're stood at address. We've got loads of forgiveness packed into this driver, but what Titleist have said about the GT range is that they're trying to bring the levels of forgiveness, distance and ball speed in line so that you're not having to choose a driver based on one of those factors and you're losing out on the others. They've worked really hard on the aerodynamics of each of the drivers in this range just to try and give more club head speed. But then across the club face, we've also got more technology there to help with the ball speeds. So we've got a speed ring on the inside of the face. You don't see this, but it's just behind the impact point to help give higher ball speeds on strikes that are right in the center of the club. But for any strikes that are slightly off center, we've also got variable face thickness across this driver to help if you do hit the ball slightly out of the toe or slightly out of the heel, you're still gonna see high ball speeds wherever you strike this driver from. We're on the 17th tee now. This is potentially the hardest tee shot on the course, and if you take a look behind me, you can see exactly why that is. We've got heavy rough all the way down the left-hand side and loads of danger down the right-hand side. And of course today, the wind is pushing us towards the water. So what we're gonna do, we've got another challenge here, another 5 balls. I'm gonna see if I can hit the fairway 5 times with this driver. One ball here on the left-hand side, just narrowly avoided the rough. This was one of my worst shots. And then we've got 3 here that, as you can see, very, very close together, very consistent. Very impressed with that in terms of the distance as well. Any one of those 3 shots we would take on this hole. But unfortunately, as you'll have seen from the shot tracers, one ball did not quite make it to the fairway here and just trailed off to the right-hand side. To be honest, if you're gonna hit 5 shots on this hole with that wind, I'd expect at least one of them to potentially be going over to that side. So the GT isn't a miracle worker, but it's definitely very consistent when you strike the shot well, and it isn't too bad either in terms of the offset when you hit it slightly left or right. Let's dive into some of the numbers and kind of go into the reason that I was fitted for the GT3 over the 2 or the 4. Obviously, there's a difference we've talked about in technology, but the numbers that I was getting from the launch monitor really backed up the reason that the GT3 was the better driver for me. So starting off with some of the carry distances, the carries that I was getting with the GT3 were really impressive at around 218 yards, which is what I would like to see with my driver numbers. Whereas I was finding that the 2 and the 4 were both flagging behind a little bit, with the GT2 coming out with a carry of 212 and the GT4 at 215. What I was seeing was that the GT4 was rolling out a little bit so that the total distance was coming up closer to the GT3, but the GT3 still came out on top with an average total of 241, again with the other 2 just flagging behind a little bit, but the GT4 coming in a close second at 238 yards. The ball speeds that I was seeing with the GT4 were the highest, an average of 137, and the GT3 close by at 136. Now, when I first got fitted for the GT driver, I definitely noticed that the ball speeds were significantly higher than I would expect to see, which could be due to the technology packed into these drivers, as that is what Titleist are claiming you are going to see with these new models. For me, the GT2 was similar to a ball speed that I would tend to see normally, down at around 133 miles an hour. And then coming on to the spin was basically what you would just expect it to be from these models. So the lowest spin driver, the GT4, had the lowest spin rate as we would expect, and the GT2 for me had the highest spin rate. So that again just backed up that for me, the 3 was in the middle and was just the most suited for me and the types of shots that I am playing. 18th hole here on the Kittux. This is my last chance to hit some shots and test this driver out before I give you guys my final verdict on the GT drivers. Let's see if we can get this one in the fairway. So coming on to an overall verdict of the GT driver, specifically the GT3, as that's obviously the model that I was fitting into. As I've already said, it looks very similar to a TSR, so it's not too different when you're stood over the ball at address. There is a difference on the face with that alignment aid being a little bit thicker and more pronounced. For me, I really liked that. If you like seeing quite a clear face on your driver, you might be a little bit put off from that because it is quite different to the TSR models. Overall, it's quite a simple looking driver. Obviously, we've said earlier that when you look at the sole of the club, there's a little bit going on there in terms of it looking quite mechanical in its design. You're sort of reminded that there's a bit of technology going in there, but overall, it's not flashy. There's not lots in your face. It's just nice, clean, and simple, which is pretty much what we would expect from a Titleist driver in general. One thing I will say, a big difference that I found from the TSR models is the sound of it is very different, and it also makes it feel a little bit different and a bit more powerful. There's definitely more of a pronounced impact sound, and that transfers over into the feel of the club at impact. Just feels like there's a little bit more speed and a little bit more power there, but overall I do like the feel of this driver. You tend to get the same feeling strike wherever you hit it on the face because there is just a lot of forgiveness there to help you out on off-center strikes. In terms of performance, obviously we took it out on the course today and there were some really big positives from that. We managed to drive a par 4 multiple times I've never driven before, and we were able to keep it on the fairway very consistently on a very tight par 4. Now, interestingly, when I got fit for this driver down at Woburn with the Titleist team, they said to me that the distribution pattern that I had with the GT3, once it was all fit to my specification, it was so tight and compact that you could mistake it for a 7-iron, because that's how consistent this driver goes in terms of the distance and the left to right dispersion. And to be honest, ever since I've been using it out on the course, I've definitely been feeling that. It's very forgiving, it's very easy to get in the fairway, and I have definitely seen some increases in distance compared to my TSR3. So obviously loads of positive points. To be honest, we couldn't really find a downside with this driver. That is until you look at the price. So the GT drivers come in at an RRP of £579, which is just a lot of money to spend on a golf club. The problem is these golf clubs are so good, and the changes that Titleist have made with the GT series, it does really make a difference compared to the TSR in my opinion. But even still, it is such a large amount of money to be paying for a driver. Now, if you're someone who really struggles with your driver, you don't feel confident, you feel like you're lacking distance and forgiveness, it very well could be an investment that is worth it for you to make. Personally, I will be putting this driver in the bag, and I really wouldn't want to be using any other driver at the minute. So I guess you could say that for me, that amount is worth it. But it is just a lot of money. It's a very expensive golf club, but it's a very good golf club as well. Thank you guys for watching. I hope you've enjoyed this video. If you have, please drop us a like. And if you haven't already, make sure you're subscribed to the Golf-A-Lot YouTube channel so that you never miss any more reviews from us in future. Thanks for watching, and subscribe for more.